Hi guys, karibuni tena for our new episode, and of course we are still continuing with our theme, breaking barriers. And today we are going to talk about a very nuanced topic revolving around democracy, but with a touch of the community, the glamorous community, the LGBTQI community, and how democracy impacts on their lived realities. In context with this year's IDAHOBIT theme, at the heart of democracy, for many LGBTQI persons, especially within the African context, the Kenyan context, and the coastal context, it does not only revolve around elections and policies, it revolves around issues of safety, dignity, access to justice, inclusion, and the freedom to live without fear. And today we are joined by beautiful people, human rights defenders who have experience and have also part of their lived realities within this movement. And they are, I will start here.
My name is Oliver Muindi, and currently I'm passionate about advocacy and um, development of marginalized community and capacity building of marginalized community. Currently working with Y Plus Global under a grant called Our Voice Fund, where we support young and rural CBOs in sub-Saharan Africa, covering 13 African countries, including Kenya and south of Kenya, all the way to South Africa. Basically, we provide funds and give funds to upcoming CBOs to go into policy change, basically call out injustices, push for change and inclusion of adolescent girls and young women and minority groups. Thank you.
Karibu sana, Oliver. And on to my right.
Hi, I'm Henry Ominde. I'm a human rights defender. I work with PEMA Kenya as communications and advocacy expert. Really passionate about inclusion, and what we do at PEMA Kenya is we champion for the inclusions of sexual and gender minorities. In Kenya, we have programs that work towards faith engagement, making sure that queer persons are included in faith spaces, policy and advocacy, of course, championing for health promotion, and also sensitizing queer persons on their rights. So it's a pleasure, and I'm delighted to be here.
Karibu sana, Oliver. And of course, I am yours, lovely Astrius. So to start us off, maybe within the context of at the heart of democracy, with the theme that is the this year's IDAHOBIT theme, I would like to know your takes on that. What do the phrase "at the heart of democracy" mean for you as a human rights defender? I'll start with you, Henry.
Okay.
Yeah.
First things first, I think that it's a very, very appropriate theme for this year's IDAHOBIT. And maybe just to give more context into IDAHOBIT, because don't assume that everyone knows what IDAHOBIT is. So it stands for International Day Against Biphobia, Transphobia, and Homophobia. And it's a very significant day because this was the actual date that the World Health Organization scrapped out homosexuality as a mental health disorder. Because before then, the narrative was that queerness was a mental condition, mental disorder. And it's I would say 30 something years now. Not really sure how long it's been, but it's really, really significant to the community just to be able to celebrate and just to stand up and commemorate this day. And why I say that it's very, very appropriate for this time is that when we look at it from a global context, there's so much happening in the world. Locally, bringing it down now to the national level, the Kenyan context, we also see that so much is happening in the world. And I feel that bringing democracy to the heart of it all basically is a call for queer people to understand that they do have a voice when it comes to democracy. They are part of democracy. Unlike all the push and pull that has existed prior and before to make queer persons feel that, that they do not matter. And we've seen queer persons being excluded and even being made to be political, fronts for aspirants. But this year's theme is very, very significant and very, very important. And I would say, as a queer person, myself, it basically means that I am seen and that I have every right to be involved in democracy. Yeah.
So it is a call for reflection on whether we belong,
Yes.
participate, and be heard.
I wouldn't say call for reflection. I would say a reminder.
A reminder.
A reminder, because we've always belonged.
No, we
Yes.
always belong.
Yes.
I like that. We always belong. I guess, Oliver, what's your take on it?
Actually, I feel like this conversation could not come at a good time, at the best time, because noting that the country is heading towards election, this conversation needs to be had now, because year in, year out, we realize every time election comes, the violence increases, more and more cases come up. And I feel like having this dialogue now of are queer people part of this conversation of democracy, or where is the seat? Do I sit? Am I in the room or am I outside? Are we part of the conversation of we are Kenyans? We are part of the process of either electing our leaders. We are part of the process of democratically being at the forefront of whatever change we would want to be part of. But now, coming exactly there again, I'm going back, coming at this time, it is to basically, I feel like it basically will start the conversation of going into the future of election next year. Where do we stand? Like, what is the stand? What is the conversation? What are we going to speak about to be changed before we have the same outcome of violence again and again and again?
Okay.
Yeah.
So it's simply the elections and the cycles of human rights violations
elections,
that are always perpetrated against the LGBTQI persons.
Yeah, and all minorities, so to say, and the larger minorities, because it's sometimes it's just a ripple of it will start with one minority group, and then the other one we ignore it, and then the next time it's this group and that group, and the violence continues. So it's a matter of having these dialogues now. Yes, at this context, yes, we're talking about LGBTQ people, but also in the larger picture, minorities in general. Where do we stand moving into the future, and how are we involved in the democratic space in this country? If that's the correct term to put.
So it is the intersection of law, policy, and human rights,
Yes.
upholding human rights.
Yes.
And given that you've mentioned something along human rights violations, so what are the common human rights violations, or some that maybe you have witnessed, or you are working on, because you gave a very good introduction there. Yeah.
With the current expertise that I have and the observation I've managed to acquire in the space that I'm in, is that most of the times the largest issue that comes at the front of violence is, one, homelessness. That's coming as a first thing that stands out, and second, physical harm. Physical harm, some to a point of not having how can I put it? My English is disappearing. Henry is always the good one with words, but yeah, here we are.
Yeah.
Yes, but homelessness always comes out, especially immediately or after elections, because most people either move from where they're staying and all that. So it means there's homelessness. There's a lot of people moving from one place to another because of safety concerns, depending on where they live, which means that is an expense and a burden, an expense burden that goes into something we don't plan for, right? And also we see discrimination when it comes to like spaces we can access, because we'll be like, oh, you're queer, then does that mean I cannot go stand in a voting line and elect the leader that I want? Because again, is it guaranteed that it's going to be safe in that space where I'm going to be? Among other things because a lot happened. A lot happens during that period, but I don't know how to list them at the moment. It's slipping my mind, but I think Henry maybe can add to that.
Yeah, sure. So, Henry, in your work, and also you mentioned that you work with APEMA Kenya, a very reputable organization in the human rights work. So, maybe now, what are these some of the common human rights violations that maybe you have come across, witnessed, and also you are working on?
Yeah. I would say a commonality when it comes to human rights violation towards gender and sexual minorities, as per my experience and from what I've been able to analyze, is it all narrows down to exclusion. Exclusion of gender and sexual minorities. And just as Oliver was speaking, when we speak about democracy stems deeper than just electoral processes. Basically, the day-to-day involvement of the kawaida mwananchi, the normal Kenyan citizen, whatever normal means.
Normal.
Normal, exactly. And so to say, violations stem from, of course, forced evictions. What else? Being physically or even verbally assaulted. Biasness when it comes to employment.
True.
You know, in access, if that is an English word.
Actually, that is the word that was hitting my mind. Access. That is it.
In access, I don't know if I've made up an English word, but in access to common services.
Yeah.
And I know that for someone they'd be like, okay, but you're going to access these services as a common mwananchi, so your queerness does not come in there. So how does that become an issue then? But we see it even right under our noses, even within Mombasa County. Like it is very, very difficult for a gender and sexual minority person to access health services. When and let me just ponder on health services a bit more. We've come to realize that when it comes to health services, basically the queer person has been narrowed down to HIV and AIDS, as if that is the only thing that affects them. Yet queer people do get other things, tuberculosis, pneumonia, cancer, diabetes, and all that. Just recently, I personally was in the process of seeking a disability certificate, and the process was very, very, very tedious. Just to see for the kawaida, a person, of course. But then I would imagine how it would then be for someone who identifies as a trans person, or is feminine presenting, and they're going to seek that as a service, are they going to have it? Okay, ni ngumu tayari vile iko when we speak to on how like acquiring for services in Kenya is, but now look at it like how much more difficult it then becomes for this other person. Another thing would be even when it comes to the ruling that we had the other day on gender marking and it being
gender
able
marker.
to change. Yes, it's been passed down as a ruling by the High Court, and people who want to change the gender markers can go and do that. But how?
How will the process
how
look
is
like?
the process going to look like for these people? So when we talk about democratic processes and we talk about inclusion, we talk about, is it going to be convenient for this person? And here's the thing that most people tend to overlook, and people tend to think that when we speak about gender and sexual minorities, we speak about a special group and all that. One of my mentors taught me something, and they told me that everyone is a minority in one way or another.
True.
So if you're there looking at someone else because their level of minority is much more publicized and known, and you think that then you're basically fingering yourself. if I would say that. So when we talk about making these services accessible for the gender and sexual minority persons, they also benefit that person that doesn't necessarily identify as a gender and sexual minority person. You know, why? Because when the services, the quality of services improve, they improve for
Everyone.
for everyone.
Actually, I even feel like that means the barrier is removed for whoever. Yeah, because the issue is there's always discrimination based, and as you say, everyone is a minority. So if a specific minority speaks up and something is improved, there's another minority somewhere who did not even identify as a minority who will have access to that thing. And Henry has spoken about access to health. I want to speak about now access to administration and what is termed as kitu ya mwananchi, right? So, for example, and I've always liked to use this example when we talk about what is accessible for young people, for the youth, for what is generally considered minorities, which are women in the general public, right? Women will be considered minorities. The first contact of the mwananchi to the government is the chief, Omze Omta. Most queer people, because one of either moving a lot because of security concerns or because they're discriminated by society, means they do not access anything that is provided by the government through that structure. Because high chances, the first person who will be a barrier is the chief or the local administration, because they're the ones who will be reported to that, or that house there's a queer person who lives there, and they'll be down to be like, oh, you need to be like the people are saying you need to leave. But again, does it remove the fact that you're a Kenyan who deserves access to these things? Because I remember there's a time I used to live in Bamburi, and then something was being given out by the chief. I think it was during COVID. I think it was food. And then from my point of like where I was, I had access to food, but I knew several people did not have access to food. So I was like, let me follow up to know, first of all, who the chief is of this area, because it was being given through the chief's office. And going there and just looking at who was there and trying to have the conversation of like, oh, I have a few people I feel like should access the service. The tension itself, without even getting to full details, because they'll be like, oh, tunataka mama na watoto, and that is it, and that ends there. And then it'll be like, there are queer people who live in this same area who will say, mi naishi fisheries, ama mi naishi Mtopanga, ama mi naishi Bamburi Mwisho, who would also at that point deserve that support, but again, because of discrimination, because of the structures that are discriminatory, they cannot access it. But which means they do not access a democratically right like service because of discrimination, right? So.
And I think just to add, because part of the work that we do at Pema Kenya is engage with the Ngao team, and that also includes local administration, and chiefs are part of it. We've been able to engage with quite a number of chiefs and assistant chiefs in I say Mombasa County, in the various sub counties, and we've seen it to be very, very successful in the sense that it usually takes a human-centered approach to engage with people, you know, and we've seen that it's actually becoming more and more easier for chiefs to be involved. For instance, even when we have cases of forced evictions, like chiefs can now be able to step in and to speak for the queer person, you know, and to actually sensitize the community and tell them that, you know what, this person has rights as a Kenyan citizen. Despite your values and what you believe in, those are yours. They are not everyone else's, you know. And just to link that up to the topic of at the heart of democracy, when we want everything to get to the heart of democracy, we need to involve human-centered approaches. We need to ensure that we are having conversations and dialogues that are not too formal or too, you know, structured or
Very rigid.
AI generated in some extent. But we need to, because, you know, queer people are real people.
Yeah.
You know, and we need to use that as an approach to help. Even when we look back from that period of COVID up until now, I wouldn't say that things are perfect, but there's been some advancements, you know, and things are getting better.
It's getting
If I
better.
would use a British accent, things are getting better. So it goes to show that there is definitely hope. Yeah.
So and maybe Henry, you mentioned that democracy is expansive. That it's not only about elections and policies. It also with context to the LGBTQI persons, it also involves their experiences, yeah, safety, dignity, and the rest. So now, and with the advancements now that you have mentioned, do you
AI.
feel that the policies and the laws now that have been instituted really look out for the marginal voices in responding to their needs and wants, especially with regards to human rights violations that we had talked about prior?
Okay. As far as policies are concerned, I wouldn't say that policies are fully inclusive of the gender and sexual minority persons. But I would say that there is room that is being made, and of course, this is because of the work that human rights organizations and passionate activists are constantly doing, to ensure that we have room at the table. You see, when we speak of democracy, and this is why I was saying that democracy is expansive, is that it's having a place at the table where decisions are made, being able to be there, that is an exercise of democracy, of democratic rights. Being able to be there in public participation forums and to speak. The same way that in public participation forums you'd have mothers, persons with disabilities, the elderly being able to be there. The same way that like I'm looking forward to a reality whereby gender and sexual minority persons can be represented in such forums. Unfortunately, I would say that right now, it's not as bold as I would, and this is for me personally, as I would envision it to be. As in, the chances of me going to a public participation forum and being there as hi, my name is Henry. I am a queer human rights defender, and guess what? I'm also a homosexual, and I'm here to speak on this, and this because people like me are often left out of this, is unlikely to happen.
Yeah.
You see, even when we get into these forums, and not all the time. So, of course, depending on the kind of forum that you're engaged in, sort of have to proceed with caution, and the issue of visibility then is sort of dimmed down. And just as you had said, when we talk about democracy and we talk about exercising democratic rights and all that, I believe that I should be able to exercise my democratic rights in my full
Full self, authentic self.
full self. I should be able to speak about my challenges from where I sit at
Wholeheartedly.
the table, wholeheartedly, without being discriminated, without having to think twice and be like, when nikitoka hapa hivi nitaenda kuishi kwa nyumba ya
Kumangwa ya
nani,
nani wewe?
nitaenda kupigwa huko, nitapanda matatu hapa hivi, that kind of stuff. So I would say that the work is being done, and we need to support this work. Like, I'll just go back to what I'd said earlier. People think that how does this work affect me and all that? It does affect you. It does affect you a lot more than you think it does. And therefore, I think a lot of work needs to be done. A lot of us need to start supporting work around inclusion. And a lot of us need to start being advocates.
Yeah, and also on that note, somebody challenged me earlier on a post, and alisema kuwa nyinyi ma LGBTQ ma NGO kazi yenu inakwanga nini. So I really relate with you that work is being done. The advocacy work, it is a long-term goal. Yeah. It is not something that which can be felt immediately. It is a work on progress. And maybe I come to you, Oliver, with you stated that you work with Y plus.
Yes.
Y plus. So, what is the international outlook?
Okay, so as I mentioned, I work with Y Plus Global, and the grant that I personally work with is still within the African continent. And just to say this bluntly, Kenya is very, very ahead of its time. Once you get out of the country, you realize the injustices get worse by the next country. And why we came in as Harvest Fund was basically because as I mentioned, we fund organizations which are adolescent girls and women led, and also queer minorities, though not in a large number. But how we approach it was basically going into support the rural and small organizations, the ones that nobody is funding. Because if you look at the larger structures of the donors, you'll be like, oh, we need you to have a certain capacity in banking. You need to have a full structure of an organization. We're like, we do not want those are barriers to giving support. So we were like, we want the organization that is upcoming, which is down there with the local Mwananchi, which is down there in a small town that nobody knows the name of, because that is where a young girl is overlooked. That is where a young girl is married off to an older person, but nobody talks about it. So the structure of the fund that we have is giving funding to those organizations, and mostly so that the girl child can get a seat at the table. And there's something that was being spoken about, and then I realized, it clicked to me, and how we approach it is, Henry mentioned it. Do we have a seat at the table? Like, that is the first agenda, right? Let's have a seat at the table. But with our fund, we go an extra mile. So anytime you report to us that you got to be part of the table, there's one question we ask. What did you say at the table? What points did you share at that table? You didn't just sit on the table. We want to know, when you went to that space, did you represent? Because we realize sometimes it's always about, we want to sit at the table. Then what? Don't just sit on the table. We want you to get to the table and be like, okay, I am here to speak about this, this, and this. Because even in our reporting, the way we do our reporting is you have to tell us, yes, I got to the technical working group. I got to the TB working group. Then what are some of the pointers that were raised by the adolescent girls and young women in the room, and how many were absorbed by the meeting? So for example, if you're doing a policy brief, how many points that you raised or the adolescent girls in the room raised that ended up in the policy brief? Because we want to track the impact of the fund. So our structure is basically, you are like from the village, got a seat at the table, got your agenda out there. It has gone to the either to the regional, to the global space. That is how we have put it. Because, and actually, from our funder, that is one of the best practices we have as a Harvest Fund, that we managed to get that data that people got to the table and there's a deliverable that went all the way up. Yes.
So it is measurable and realistic.
Yes, it is measurable impact. But also, I think I'll go back ago. I had an experience in Mombasa, which is one of the most fascinating. I always tell this whenever I get time. It's so interesting.
Just spill the tea.
Yes, because it's quite interesting. So be like, oh, we need young people to be involved. We need young people to come to the table. We did that. We were reviewing a policy by the Mombasa County back in the day, like 4 years. I think 4 years ago. I was actually the only person representing the larger sexual minorities, only one. So, which I had a lot of like
privilege.
No, I'm not even. It's not privilege. I had to be there. No, that's not privilege. I had a lot of responsibilities because now, and Henry says this a lot. When you're speaking, make sure it represents the people that you're speaking for.
True,
yes,
true.
Don't make it your own agenda, or don't misconstrue the information. Yes, so I tried my best to make sure like I speak as much and wide about, to include everybody's lived reality or personal experiences. Now, after we revised the policy and all that, we had a meeting with the MCAs, a few of them, including the chairman of health. So in the session, we had to present the policy and some of the edits we had done. And then I remember the person representing the general youth was the one who was starting. And then they spoke about different things. I remember they spoke about one thing that really was quite fascinating. Like, so we were requesting the county to kindly include a budget of how condoms come into the county and get to the public health facilities, which you all know, in a way, that is a right we all like access to reproductive health, because I think condoms fall under that.
Yeah.
and a certain lady MC, I'm not going to mention names. Like,
You don't want
no, I don't have
Una
lawyers. Yes, and a Subaru.
A black Subaru.
A black Subaru. So the lady was like, "No, you cannot talk about condoms." I'm like, "Okay." Bombastic side eye. What do you mean? And mind you, this is the youth part because we are out of the sitting of the group. We selected the two of us. One guy to represent the youth, I to represent the other minorities. Basically, I was told to represent other minorities.
the others.
Others. So the young person, the guy is there, is presenting, talking about condoms and all that. It's all like, no. Personally, I do not accept that. Quote unquote, the MCA. I don't accept that. I feel like if you like that girl too much, marry her, put them in your house, and all that, or you should abstain until you get married. And then in my head, I'm like, you realize kids are going to have sex. People are going to have sex. Either way, people like young people are going to have sex with or without religion, with or without being conservatives. But that was our stand. And then in my head, like I remember I got shocked to a point I couldn't even speak because I'm like, this is a person representing a whole ward speaking like that. Because at that point, I felt those were her personal opinions. They were not of the people she represents. Because people need those products. And it got so tense to a point of, I remember the organizer was like, I think like that your section, I don't think we're going to touch that, because that was just for the general youth, and it got so heated over commodities. And then there I was wanting to talk about inclusion of queer minorities. I'm like, girl, no.
And just to interject, I think that also brings in, like, again, just bring it back to the issue of democracy, the kind of leaders that we elect.
Yes.
You know, mtu anakuja anaambia mimi wajua mimi ni mama mtaa, mimi nimekuwa hapa hivi, nimekuwa na nyinyi, watoto wenyu nimewafanyia hivi na vile and all that. But then that is the kind of thinking that we have representing us. And yes, you might not want to do certain things because of your personal values and your religion and all that. But then the country is not about you.
Yes.
The country is not about your personal values and beliefs. I mean, my friends know this, that if it were up to me, this country on its own, my friends, I am telling you,
Like, let's
literally,
slow this down.
listen,
Shut off
listen. First things first. If I had it my way, like I did it my way. First things first, like people would work 2 days a week.
Period.
You know, like, hey, but that is just me. But is that the issue? No. But hey, I go to work like full days a week and all that, blah, blah, blah. Why? Because, again, there's systems in place. And these systems are supposed to benefit an entire demographic of people.
Yeah.
Not just people that, mimi sioni kama itafaa, mimi naona mtu afanye hivi na hivi. Like, when you were sharing that experience, I got offended because I was like, then when this person was saying this, were they thinking that, I mean, look at the statistics right now that we even have about HIV prevalence in Africa. Let me generalize it in Africa. I think it was Cote d'Ivoire or Nigeria that actually had
Nigeria.
the highest prevalence rates of HIV, you know. And even you look at that context, it's basically the same way of thinking that's involved. Even look at our own context. Since people started with the anti-LGBT, easy condoms isipeanwe kila mahali vilikuwa zinapeanwa, condoms ina promote ushoga na usagaji and all that. And then I'm like, by the way, people need to understand that homosexuality and anal sex are two different things. If you want to learn more, come, I will teach you. I do that for a living. But yeah, like people need to also move away from that. But anyway, democracy also puts us at a situation as queer people whereby we need to take up responsibility, you know, and get involved in these processes. Like huyu mwenye amenda ameongea hivyo, and you feel that they did not represent you. Good, they didn't represent you, but what did you do? What have you done? I mean, what are you planning to do in the next election and sit there? And also, you don't even have to wait for the next election. You can easily do something. You know, are you aware that you could easily write a letter to that office and be like, no, I was not pleased by these remarks that you made this, and this, and this, and this. Or like even take it further to the municipal county, you know. So even for queer people, and as much as we're talking about democracy, it is very, very important for us to understand that there are responsibilities that come into it.
Yeah.
And I love what Oliver had said about not just being at the table,
Yeah.
but what is it that you you bring to the table?
Yeah.
And you get out of the table.
Yes, a colleague of mine printed a T-shirt for me once that said, "I bring nothing to the table." But as in, when you get these opportunities to be at the table, don't just be content with that. There's so much that you can do at that table. Yeah.
Yeah. And you spoke about the narrow mindset about LGBTQI being just only HIV.
Yeah.
HIV. Now, as a communication expert, what are the interactions now maybe you have had, because I know you at a personal level, now maybe at the social media, the digital media, what is the conversation like? And now maybe and let me start with that first. Yeah.
Could you please rephrase that again?
In their civic space, like what are the conversations around LGBTQI and their need to participate in their democracy?
Okay, when we speak about the civic space, which unfortunately, in my opinion, is that it is constantly shrinking. You know, and the reasons are basically unfortunate. You know, civic spaces are shrinking simply because of donor donor interest shipping and all that.
Why are you looking
I-
at me?
Look over there. Anyway, you'll edit that off.
Keep it. I want them to feel guilty for looking at me while saying it.
Anyway, so when you look at the civic space, and you had mentioned about social media, online platforms, conversations are being had about queerness. Are they the kind of conversations that I would want to be had from a personal point of view? No. Is the current queer representation that is out there on mainstream media true for every queer person? Definitely no. And it doesn't take someone who, has critiqued it to understand. Like, you just get across materials on Instagram and you'll just be like, okay, you know. For me personally, one thing that I like to do is, and I'm really grateful for Pema Kenya again, because we have an initiative called an advocacy academy. And what we do is we try to empower community members on how they could approach advocacy in a more intentional way. And that's what I was going to. What we really try to do is to ensure that young activists, young people who feel like they want to be visible out there are intentional about what they do and about the impact that they want to make out there. It is quite unfortunate that queerness is viewed from one lens, which is not true. And I say this again, it is not true. Jamani, sisi sio viumbe vya ngono peke yake.
Waambie tena
Yes,
wasikie.
there's a lot more. And if people are interested to learn more, we'll be able to get somewhere else. But again, social media nowadays, okay, not nowadays, because yes, I don't want to sound like I am old. But then again, yes, social media has become basically a place of clout. So even when you're practicing online advocacy, you have to be extra careful. You have to be intentional about what you do. You also have to look at the risks that are involved. In as much as you're doing this work out there, you have to conduct a risk assessment. And I don't want you to put yourself at risk out there in the name of advocating for rights. And also at the same time, there's a lot of trolling and backlashing that happens online. People just come and try to insult you and do all those kinds of negative things out there. So having spaces for young queer persons, not just young queer persons, but just any queer person that is doing that work on online spaces, is very, very important. Just having spaces for them to just touch base and debrief and just get support from each other as a community is very, very important when it comes to utilizing the online civic space. I don't know if I have responded.
And on that,
I want to be controversial.
please do. It's a safe space.
No, I want to be controversial. And I don't know, maybe I'll speak this. I don't know if it'll come off as coming from a point of privilege, but I feel like as gay people, it is our responsibility of what then do we put out there. And as I said, most people are pushing like the wrong rhetoric because of clout, right? And I feel like that is even digging us deeper into like hate, right? Because I feel like today with all the social media platforms that are there, like this would have been the right time for people to give out the correct information about queerness, about sexuality and all that. But because people want clicks, they ride on the same misinformation that is out there, knowing fully well it is misinformation. But they're like, oh, I want some new followers on TikTok.
So let me be controversial.
Yes, because it is so sad. Because the other day I saw someone I've seen come onto TikTok. They're like 4 or 5 months into TikTok. Very nice guy. They will always talk about farming, their house. People sent them money. They built a small house, a small shade in their farm and all that. Literally like 2-3 weeks ago, that has turned. They started cross-dressing, talking about sex, like talking graphically about sex, right? And then now like they have more views because obviously as Kenyans,
Super weird out here.
we were known that we watch the most amount of queer porn, gay porn in the world. So sadly, the person has changed that. And I remember I went to the live, and then there was a guest who was on the live, and then I asked Tyrone, like, by the way, what happened? I really liked your content back then. Like, what has changed? And then the lady who was on the live also asked, by the way, what made you change the way you used to do your content? Because your content was humble, really nice, authentic conversations about life in general. Now you're cross-dressing, you're talking about sex, and you're talking a bit from a very graphic point of view. And like, oh, I realized the other way did not give me money. Point blank, he said it that way. You're like, the other way doesn't give me money. And I need money to survive. These people like this. That is how he said it. Point blank. Like,
And
people like
I
this.
think that's the thing. And for a weird reason, I actually applaud the guy because they were intentional and they said it.
Yeah,
that I'm doing this because of money.
Yes.
So it's also very important for us to realize that all these things that we come across on social media, not all of it is for the same intent, right? Like there's some people that will put out content there that is meant to inform people.
Yeah.
So how then do we support that work, safeguard that work that is being done there? And for those that are doing it out there to get money and all that, sawa, you're doing it to make money, hey, do you. But a question is, particularly if for someone who is part of the community, then while you're doing that, are you then contradicting or rather creating a pool or a force that is going to tarnish the work that human rights defenders are doing in order to bring equity or inclusion for gender and sexual minorities. So I think it's very, very important for us to have, and that's why I ended my whatever I was doing
Your take on it,
my take by saying that having spaces for people to engage. The online space is not a simple space to navigate. People think that it's as simple as, hey, I have an iPhone, I can take good pictures, I can
go
do
live.
this and all that. I can be able to post my views on what is happening in the country when it comes to the cost of fuel and all that. Yes, you can be able to do it, but whatever you're posting out there, number one, is it factual? Is it intent to empower someone or to bring someone, like to give someone a call for change or a call for action, or is it just going to be there that Austrians today went and did their hair and their nails and they're there and they're like, guy,
Groom with me.
you know what?
No,
let's talk about democracy. Democracy basically, like, fuck everyone who thinks that queer people do not exist. Like, fuck all of you and all that. Guy, I'm going too deep and too passionate, and I feel that I'll create enemies after this. But let me just finish on it. That sometimes, like, how the message is actually put out there really matters.
True.
Yeah,
True.
that I want you to include in this. How is it?
I don't know. I don't know. Okay. I want to put this on the table.
Yes.
And, like I want to put this on the table and see how then. So we remember there was a media regulation, something that was being passed. Bill, was it a media regulation or what was it? I know you're up to date with such.
Media.
No, it was content, because it was something involving
Oh,
content.
it was about their content.
Yeah, content
Yes.
regulation,
Yes,
right?
yes.
Then again, do you feel that this can be a positive thing for the queer space? Or, depending on its content, can go the other way?
And exactly, so that one was my next leading question to you. Because recently we had the Court of Appeal.
Not a bitch bringing it back to me.
Recently, we had the Court of Appeal actually disagreeing now with the lower courts that, yes, queer people have the freedom of expression, the freedom of artistry. We are referencing the Rafiki film, now, which was banned across Kenya, and yet it went to the international stage and got that global recognition. So, with the censures and the social filters now that the LGBTQI persons, social media influencers, or quote unquote, we call them celebrities, they are facing through.
I don't know who's celebrity, but again,
Yes. So maybe we did that now back to you. Is it a positive or is it a negative with that context?
so somebody the other day said something, and this is going to be controversial again. Somebody said something, and for a moment I sat back, looked at it, and realized I was turning into I almost going into like yeah, I know both of you got the joke. Yes. So this lady, she was in a sitting up with I think the LSK and something, and then she said like the problem we have in Kenya is that all our laws and policies have a religious view, or are religious influenced, or are religious, like there's a sprinkle of religiousness. Yeah, there's a pixie dust of religion in it, to a point that every time we are having any policy, and there's always an aspect of conservativeness inside it. And I feel like, first of all, we all know our country is not fully Christian, nor is it fully Muslim. There's traditionalists, there's atheists, and others, right? And the people who are Christians but have wiggle room to have opinions that will not be valued Christian, right? So when she said that, I looked at it, I realized that that is true. Like every time something new is introduced, it always comes with a point of conservativeness, which means it's influenced by religion. So that's why it's conservative. Instead of being a legal, purely legal, there's always be like, yes, but
According
this
to
content should not be there. Argument, or as a religious person,
as African people,
according to our cultures, according to how we were raised, and then we like, that is your, and I said it, that is personal to you. It is not the same experience to everyone else.
True.
There are people who have grown up fully outside all the religions. They exist in between the cracks of those religions. And whenever you become conservative in a point, some people don't even know how to process it because they don't know that regulation of it from a religion point of view. So sadly, as a country, we still endorse a lot of things from a religious point of view. And I feel if we start doing things purely from a legal point of view, there will be so many things that will change.
But I think just to interject, not, and just point of correction, not from a legal point of view, but rather from a democratic point of
from
view.
a democratic point
Okay,
of view.
because again, some of these laws that we have out there, and if we're going to renew it like that,
conservative.
are not necessarily necessarily appropriate. And it's just adding to the point that Oliver was was stating, is that democracy is not about one particular thing. It's not about religion. It's not about culture. And democracy is a beautiful thing because democracy acknowledges the existence of all
Kila
of these
mtu.
things. And I don't know, maybe it's just me and my euphoric state of mind right now.
No.
But what makes society beautiful for me and how I envision society to be like is the fact that we are diverse. Diverse in how we are created by the Almighty,
Religious
how we think,
associations.
how we present ourselves, our views, our opinions, what even we like to eat and not eat, and even what we are attracted to in partners. We are very, very diverse, you know.
Yeah.
And I think that is what democracy is all about. That is what democracy pushes for. So there is definitely need to look more into democracy and stop looking at things from one lens. Because just as Oliver said, that unfortunately people don't look at it from a democratic lens, but people look at it from one size is supposed to fit all.
Everyone.
Yeah.
And on that, Henry, you mentioned that as a Pema Kenya, you work with local administration, the Ngao. Is it the Ngao? The Ngao. Now, recently, I was just following up these conversations around Nyumba Kumi initiative and how the LGBTQI persons, especially in informal settlements, the Nyumba Kumi initiative is being pushed to actually step on their necks, like outing. And you mentioned something along homelessness and housing insecurity.
Not even in the informal settlements, literally everywhere, right? Because not just because maybe I live in a place with flood doesn't mean I will not be discriminated. The issue is getting to a point of realizing that person, one, if I'm living in a certain area, just to put it in context to the people out there, because I don't know, they always assume sexual minorities get a pass. If I'm living in a certain place, in a certain flat, I am paying the exact same rent that my next door neighbor is paying. I am paying utilities the next door neighbor is paying. I am part of the society as the next person. But that need to tell me or to tell someone you do not belong here, that is always what baffles me. What makes you feel that that person does not belong there? What makes them not belong there? The fact that they like something you do not. But now, as you mentioned, Nyumba Kumi, most time that I'd mentioned this before, is what is used by the neighbors to be like, we don't want so and so, we want them out. Argument, oh, we have children. Which that argument every time I do not see how it relates, but that is what is used over and over and over, even on social media. Like, oh, wajua tuna watoto. I'm like, yes, najua mna watoto, but an existence of this human being hapa in affected your existence with your family and your kids here. Like, I do not see the correlation, but it has been used so much so that people justify it to like, oh, the women complain because there's kids and they were told to leave.
Na kwani sisi watoto wa watu
Yes, yeah, we're going there. Like, this person is also a child
of somebody.
to someone. They even might be a parent to someone because there's this belief that queer people don't have families and children and stuff. I don't know who even told them that. That is impossible. But again, maybe this person also has the family of their own. But you selfishly look at your family and your comfort over someone else's. And in a democratic setting, all of us should be equal. But most of the times, there's always an imbalance that my safety and my kids' safety are more important than, oh, that queer person, oh my God, I hate it. That is so wrong because it doesn't make any sense because anyway,
It's just a lot. I know you're boiling with a lot in there.
What we do is yes, we engage with the Nyumba Kumi also. We have a program called Utu Baraza, and it's also a human-centered approach. And Utu Baraza basically, just as the words speak for it, it's basically a human Utu Baraza inamaanisha nini in English?
Togetherness.
Togetherness, having conversations and all that. So utubazas basically provide room for that to happen. And we have a cohort. Don't quite have the figures at the top of my head right now. Wish I'd prepared for that. But we have quite a number of Nyumba Kumi leaders who are actually Utubaza moderators. What that means is that they can be able to bring in members of the community and to conduct sensitizations on human rights, on the existence of gender and sexual minorities within the community, and why they are important, because, hey, they're human beings and they are important. And I think that doesn't happen alone. While this is also happening, the community, the queer person, is also empowered, is also trained, is also capacity built to understand their rights, to also understand that in as much as you have rights, there are limits to everyone's rights.
True.
So, like you said, there's no special treatment to you just because you are queer, and that is one thing that we do as an institution. And bringing in the two together, we do see successes happening. We do see the same Nyumba Kumi as you've said. Yes, there's been notorious incidences whereby Nyumba Kumi has been forced to evict people who have been involved in the evictions. But then we've also begun to see a surge whereby the same Nyumba Kumi would actually step in and actually go and bring in the local police or even the chiefs and bring them on board and say, hey, this landlord cannot do this to this person because this is unconstitutional. So such initiatives do make it happen. And of course, because of what people have been taught about the queer person, people will always have those misinformed notions or narratives about queer persons. But just like to end with this, and it's a saying that our executive director loves to say, and it's very, very iconic, and I think you might have heard of it, that picture yourself on a plane, like you've paid for business class on a plane, and you are this conservative, using your words, conservative folk. You've paid business class, Emirates, Qatar, that level of flight experience. Just picture it, meditate and picture it. And then suddenly you hear that the pilots are LGBT.
Will you jump?
So are you going to jump off and be like, no, and all that? And that's it. Because queer people are doctors, lawyers, judges, activists, human defenders, journalists,
Presidents.
teachers, presidents,
According to them, they have to look a certain way. The conservatives are just so
Yes.
out there.
Good.
No.
Okay. So, with that, given that we are now speaking of the practical solutions that exist within the community to advance our democratic process, you have talked about the inclusion of the local administration at the chiefs. Yeah. So there is this ongoing, can I call it a rhetoric or a sentiment that the LGBTQI communities, we are really degrading the women rights, the PWD rights, the intersex rights. Have you heard of such kind of conversations?
I think for me, I would say that yes, I have heard of such rhetorics circulating out there. But one thing is, LGBT is not as a unique genus of human beings. Different to the one that is here. I believe we are Homo sapiens.
We are Homo sapiens.
Yes, Homo sapiens. We are not a unique genus that, hey, this is a Homo LGBT, that one there, and they threat this. LGBT persons consist of women, of men, of persons with disabilities, of persons who use and inject drugs, of persons living with HIV, of persons who are affected by cancer, of persons who are affected by poverty, of persons that go through the basic things that any normal person would get, and that particular narrative is misinformation. And unfortunately, misinformation sells more,
And it spreads fast.
and it goes way further, you know. It would get much coverage. People would actually spend more time, and even the so-called social media celebrities would actually ponder on it more than the actual facts. You know, I'm looking forward to a day whereby people would simply accept that supporting or empowering the LGBT movement doesn't take away from any existing movement. Rather, it strengthens the movement because yes, there have been some things that have happened, misfortunate series of events. But when you look at how all these movements started, when you look at women's rights movement, when you look at the first women's march in, I think, United States, I'm not sure if it was Washington, on equal pay for women and equal rights for women, they started because the bottom line thing was there was exclusion, and there was a need to include these people, and there was a need not to look at this person from a lens of others, but to look at them from a lens of me. I have a mother, I have a father, I have a family that is very, very proud of me. Proud of me of what I have achieved as a person and what I aspire to do in life and to become in life. And it has nothing to do with my sexual orientation or gender identity. My sexual orientation or gender identity is personal to me. And provided it doesn't, get to a point whereby I am forcing it on someone else, then I don't believe that there should be a reason for it to be villainized. I can exist as myself and add value to the community and participate in democratic processes and give back and also receive. Not just give back, but also receive from what other people are doing out there. So I do believe that this movement can be able to give back to the other movements, and there's nothing to contest about. Like I said earlier, I personally, I also identify as someone with a disability, an unseen disability, and I am also a queer person, and so you will tell me that I cannot be, yes, I cannot be queer and a person with a disability, all that kind of thing. So we just need to wake up.
To wake up.
Yeah.
Now, maybe your thoughts, Oliver?
Yeah, I agree with you because people have this box where they want to fit all queer people, right? And for example, I work with women and girls. That is my current profession for the last 3 years, and fully immersed, fully there for the good cause and like change in that space. But that does not take away from who I am as a person, right? So the issue is, I feel like people want to put a certain, and that is where we're talking about the misinformation. The misinformation is so wildly out there that people assume they'll find queer people in certain spaces. Like a queer person cannot be a doctor. I'm like, you realize high chances from the time you wake up to the time you go to bed, you've interacted with several queer people in different capacities. From maybe you're the conductor who was with the matatu, maybe the driver, maybe the person who was selling you something at the shop, maybe the teller at the supermarket, maybe the guy you bought water on the side of the road. People should realize that people exist in so many in so many different professions, and it's not about sex and what people do in their bedrooms, rather than just humanity and people just existing and struggling, that the rest of us with all the fuel prices being where they are, we are all struggling there. But
In that line.
yeah, we are all there. So this notion of wanting to be like, oh, they're bad because of this and this. Like that argument has run stale, according to Kiki Palmer. Move on. Yeah.
Alafu na wewe mwenye unaashwa na chenye watu wanafanya kwa bedroom yao zamani, like
No, but actually, I always feel like that has been said so a million times, but it still bothers them anyway. But I think the conversation now should go to like, by the way, it's not just about that. It's about people are professionals and people still are out there doing jobs and working and nothing. Actually, it does not take away from all that. Yes, the sexuality does not take them away from just being another Kenyan citizen, existing, paying their taxes, and struggling as any other Kenyan. Yeah.
As human rights defenders, do you think there is a practical solution towards this foreign interference, manipulation, and information which is coming from the West and from the East?
I don't know. The question is very interesting. I know that is a thing you're very interested in personally. And then you thrive on that. I always feel like that conversation is pointed to the wrong direction. I feel actually the people who point it mostly the government, be like, oh, these people are being given money by the Westerners. Like you realize the government is the one who's very much influenced by the West. Like most of our policies in this country are very much influenced by the West. But anyway, away from that, I don't have the facts correct, so I won't go deep into that. People always have, especially like the conversation about queerness, like, oh, this is a Western thing and all that. That argument is so like short-sighted, right? Because it's not something you can come and just take out. So it means it was not just brought and dropped. Yes, it's not something that was brought and dropped. People have discovered themselves, some even away from modernization in literally rural somewhere in this country, and they still discover their sexuality. Does it mean a white man came and looked for them somewhere in Ukambani or somewhere in Central, somewhere in Isiolo? No, they just genetically they're just that way. It just happens that way. There's also this issue of like, oh, people are getting money from abroad to push for this agenda. It's because, again, the misinformation. The issue is you don't even understand what maybe, for example, Pema Kenya does. But just because they have, they're an NGO, you just know they're an NGO. You don't even have any other fact. They're just an NGO. Wanapewa pesa na wazungu wa promote kuchu. Like, with no facts.
The propaganda now.
No, nothing. You have nothing. You just know them as an NGO. Bas. That's it. That's proof enough that they're being given money by the West to push for a certain agenda, which is always misinformation. But I'll leave it to Henry because they're the one who works in the space and best suited to answer that.
I think I do agree. I do agree that Western influence supports this movements. And I'll say I do agree, and I'll pin it down to the anti-gender, anti-rights movement. We know very well that it is funded. What happened in West Africa started with, I think it was
Mali, the Burkina Faso.
Ghana was the first
Yes,
one.
Ghana.
Then Nigeria, and then they went to that corner. Of
Ghana,
the
Senegal.
and then basically Senegal became basically like the alarm sounding that, you know what, we are here, we are going to do this. Not even to go far, Uganda itself. We do have institutions, the Family Protection Conference that happened, something Slater.
Sharon Slater's the Family International Watch.
Yes. When you look at Sharon Slater and you look at the resources that were put or are still being put to supporting this particular movement, to come in and go against the organizations that are working on human rights. Because we are not working on special rights for gender and sexual minorities. We're working on human rights that we feel, that are actually violated that we do not get to experience as gender and sexual minorities, you know? But then someone actually from the West pays for governments and religious folks to come in and push for policies, you know, and have realities that are actually unfortunate, not just for queer people, but to the African person. The African person is affected because their rights become further and further infringed. Their rights to access quality healthcare services are infringed, and no one is there to fight for it. Let's look at HIV and AIDS and how the queer movement has been monumental or rather instrumental when it comes to pushing for improvements when it comes to HIV care and even when it comes to issues to do with naitwaje PrEP and condom distribution and all that. You know, we all know that it is this same people that have actually been very, very vocal and at the front line of saying this, right? But then here we are coming to say then that, you know what, Apana, you know, what then will that mean for HIV programming? Not that that's the only thing, again. What then will it look like for a society whereby basically everyone is forced
To undergo FGM.
sorry?
Undergo FGM.
To undergo FGM.
Yeah.
You know, where everyone is forced that, hey, Oliver, you need to have a family right now because it is the will of God. It is African for you to have 8 children in this economy, in this tax, in this fuel prices, and all that. You get. So I think that it's actually unfortunate that we do have Western influence that are actually supporting the anti-rights movement. And when we talk about the NGOs being supported by what's it
The
called?
Western funds.
The Western funds and all that. Of course, the work that we do needs money. It needs support.
Yeah.
That's
Even our government is supported by the Western funds.
Exactly.
The Ministry of Health. Si ukweli.
Exactly. And if there's a local donor that wants to come and support the work, then feel free. We are on social media. We have our website. Come,
Donate.
see, donate. Yeah.
Thank you. And also, that one, I throw it back to you, to the Pan-Africanists out there who say that democracy does not work in an African context. Then why then do we allow the Western influence to affect our own democratic processes? That's a question that all of us need to ponder over. And maybe as we wrap up on this segment, maybe what are your takes with the Constitution of Kenya 2010? Is it delivering on its mandate, or are we really hapa na pale?
The Kenyan Constitution of the 2020, actually the 2010 Kenyan Constitution, I find it to be it was very creative. And the guys who wrote it were quite creative minds as well. It's always inclusive, but I feel not to the maximum. But now the implementation has always been the problem. Yes, because you realize every time we have conversations about certain changes that need to be done or certain things that need to be improved, you realize constitutionally they're always covered. But on ground, ndo aga kuna matatizo. Like, you find it, the constitution very clear, when maybe a section is very clear on the matter. I'm not an expert in the constitution, so just to say, but you always find that a specific matter is very clearly highlighted. As in, yes, you'll find, for example, the criminalization, Penal Code 165. But at the same time, you talked about there's also freedom of expression, freedom of artistry expression. Now we have the gender marker issue because they did quote the constitution. So it means the constitution was very aware. But now the issue is always implementation. And as Henry had mentioned, the High Court will say something. But then how then is the access to that thing looking like? Will it be readily accessible? Or will there still be barriers and barriers and barriers before accessing it? Yeah.
Maybe on your thoughts, Henry, is the Constitution of Kenya really advancing human rights as it was drafted to be?
I think the fact that we have the 2010 constitution in existence is a plus for us. And just as Oliver was saying earlier, that Kenya has definitely made some strides, a lot of strides that we need to be proud of as a people. And the constitution on its own is at the center of all those strides. And it's because of that constitution that even someone like me can be able to sit on this podcast, that despite what happens on ground and all that, I know that the constitution guarantees me these rights. And woe to anyone who wants to come and violate those rights, because they'll have to deal with, you won't deal with me, you'll deal with the constitution. And I think the issue comes in with implementation, yes, but then also it comes down to the local Mwananchi understanding the constitution and even knowing that it exists. You'd be shocked to find out that even in peri-urban areas, we do have people that do not have not come into contact with that small booklet,
Even Article 1.
yes, of the constitution. Even asking them like what the constitution is, like you you'd be shocked. Like to some people, you listen to them and be like, but it's true. We do have people who do not, and in this the same country. So I think that it's also the duty of the government and also the leaders that we elect through the democratic processes to ensure that more and more education is done around the constitution. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Oliver and Henry, for joining us today to have this lovely conversation around the voices at the heart of democracy, and also in in uh, in amplifying the voices of the LGBTQIA persons and the right-based work that beautiful organization it's PEMA Kenya and Y Plus do, both at the international level and at regional level. I see.
Level.
So for me to you, I say always subscribe to our YouTube channel, and also we have the social media pages. At Instagram is at CMRSL, Facebook is Center for Minority Rights, TikTok Center for Minority Rights, X at Center for Minority Rights. Thank you and see you again. Bye.